Hi, and welcome to Literary Hype. I am Stephanie, your Literary Hype woman, and today's author conversation is a fun one. We've got a lot of books to talk about when it comes to Amalie Howard. So she's got her YA book series. The first one was Queen Bee. She's got another one coming out, so we're talking about that. And then Always Be My Duchess. She's got another one in this series. We got a lot to talk about. So without any further ado, here's my conversation with Amalie Howard. Well, welcome to Literary Hype.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here on Literary Hype.
It's so exciting to have you on to talk about, you've got so many books coming up. First off, we got to talk about, because you've got 4 books in the next 8 months or so, if that.
Yes, and so I have The Worst Duke in London is coming out, and then in September, and then January I have The Starlight Heir, which is my debut romantasy, and then I have the second Queen Bee series book, The Diamonds, called Lady Night, in April.
And I think I saw another one from you, or someone with the same name as you, that's
What?
Bumps in the Night?
Oh, Bumps in the Night came out this year, but the paperback will come out.
Okay, so that's what it was. Okay.
And also the paperback of another book, so yeah.
I was looking at it, I'm like, girl,
You know?
how do you balance keeping so many projects going at the same time?
I think it helps. I have different playlists. So if I have to switch projects, I'll put on that music, and I think it does something in your brain, which is, I don't know, just says, okay, time to work on this project. And usually I'll create the playlist, for historical, it's mostly classical. Sometimes it's classical with, a beat. I love that.
So it goes along with the Bridgerton vibe.
Like Lindsay Sterling, it's hardcore. So good.
The classical with the beat goes along with the Bridgerton vibe.
Yeah, it does.
Which Queen Bee was getting a lot of comparisons to. Which, what was it like for you to get compared to something that is such a cultural phenomenon?
For Bridgerton, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it was phenomenal. And, the person who did it was Julia Quinn. She, on her site, was, said really great things about, supporting the book and supporting me. She's always been such a great advocate, I think, for, me especially, which I really appreciate. Thank you, Julie.
I mean, what a big name to get support from.
Yeah.
I would die.
Yeah.
I would just be like, and I have peaked. I cease to exist now.
I think she's a very, very kind person and generous with her time, which is great. So, but yeah, being compared to Bridgerton, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so talk a little bit about Queen Bee, and it's the next book, which you just showed off the brand new cover. It's so cute.
So beautiful. Queen Bee is pitched as The Count of Monte Cristo meets Bridgerton, and it's about a teen girl who's betrayed by her best friend over a boy. And she decides 3 years later, instead of just taking, the crumbs that she had of her life, to disguise herself and go back to high society as an heiress, and basically shows up, sees him, and suddenly has to decide whether revenge is worth another chance at love. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Revenge is always awesome. Yeah.
Yes, revenge stories are wonderful. And when it's Bridgerton vibes and revenge, it's just a delightful time.
Right?
So where are we looking to go with book 2?
Oh, so book 2. I'm so excited for this book. It's Lady Night. And I kind of pitch it as Dead Poets Society, but with girl gangs and banned books. So it's a girl group that does, they come together and they do all the stuff that boys do. They fence, they ride races at midnight, sometimes in disguise, sometimes not. They steal from the heroine's brothers to save an orphanage. So, not quite on the straight and narrow, but they're taking chances here and there. And then Rafi, who's in the first book, finds out. So it's Zia and Rafi, Keston's sister. And then basically by the end of it, they have to, figure out that, it's not worth kind of breaking the law to break boundaries, basically. So I'm excited about that one.
I'm very excited. I got an arc of Queen Bee, and it's in rough condition because I took it with me everywhere for a while.
It's awesome.
Everywhere. But you also have an adult Regency romance coming, and that one is The Worst Duke in London.
Yeah.
So this is book 3 in a series. Yep. So tell us where this is, and if people can pick this one up without having read the first 2.
Most of my books are standalones, and so it's a friend group, so you don't have to read the first ones. Hopefully you'll read it and be like, this friend group sounds delightful. I want to read all of them. But the third book, the series is the Taming of the Duke series, and it's based on 90s films reimagined as historical, which is kind of funny because you look at the first book, which was Pretty Woman, right? So that was Pretty Woman, but make it historical. Book 2 was Clueless, but make it historical. But Clueless was Emma. So Emma, Clueless, and then,
bringing it full circle.
Never Met a Duke Like You. And then the third book, which comes out in September, is 10 Things I Hate About You, which is one of my favorites. But that's also based on Taming of the Shrew. Like, what is happening here?
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a friend group and how they each meet the men that, that are their matches, basically.
This is kind of 10 Things I Hate About You inspired. Did you rewatch the movie as you were plotting this or as you were writing to help keep you along with the plot of the movie? Or how did you? I
literally have those movies memorized in my head because I watched them so many times. So didn't have to rewatch it. I love Heath Ledger in that movie. So it was great. I didn't have to. And plus the thing about retellings is you never want it to be like an overt copy because that does nothing fresh. I don't know who it was I was talking to one time. I said, if you're doing a retelling, pick 3 things that are iconic about the thing you're retelling and then put your own spin on it. So that's what I did.
Why are retellings so popular right now?
I want to say that I think it's like a sense of nostalgia. So if it's something that you love and you see a fresh version of it, it's like exciting. I had somebody come up yesterday and tell me Beast of Beswick was the best Beauty and the Beast retelling they'd ever read, and that made me feel really good because there's so many, and I love reading those. But everybody likes a good, Beauty and the Beast trope.
Are there any more books planned for this series, and what movie would you be looking at for those?
Well, I'm gonna have to get back to you on whether there's a 4th book because there is a 4th book, but I don't have a timeline on it, and it will probably be based on Drive Me Crazy. That movie.
So what is it about Regency romance that you love that now you've got YA and adult Regency romances?
I mean, I love the time period. It was, I want to say 1811 to 1820 when the Prince Regent, Prinny, was running things. And he was a bit of a womanizer and a player and was always showing up at all the parties and stuff. But that was the time period, 1811 to 1820. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Yeah. But I like it because I love research. So if I'm researching for the world, I'm really going to know what I'm writing. I don't have to go look something up because I've already learned it because I've written so many books in that time period. So it's a comfort factor for me, right? Somebody asked me that as well, like when we were chatting at a table and I was like, yeah, Regency and Victorian. I know both of those. I know what fashions were worn. I know what words were used during that time frame. And you would think that maybe a word existed. No, there's words that started in the 1860s that weren't used in 1815. I like to be that authentic. So whether it's YA or adult, doesn't matter.
What's the weirdest fact you've come across while researching for your historical?
I love this story. I'm going to horrify everyone for Thanksgiving forever. In the Victorian era, there's something called a bourdaloue. It looks like a gravy boat, and basically women under those massive dresses, their ladies' maids would hold it under so they could go to the bathroom and then go pour it out. And it looks just like a gravy boat. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone. When you look at your gravy boat and think that it was a pea boat called a bourdaloue.
Having Regency romances for teens and for adults, do you approach writing them differently, or how does that process go through in your head?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it is different, right? Obviously, I mean, for teenagers, things are they're bigger. There's more hormones involved. There's more emotions involved. The frontal cortex is not developed for teens until 25. So they're going to make more impulsive decisions. They're going to be, not think things through as you would if you were older than 25. And so there's a lot of more they'll, take chances more, I think. Everything's all or nothing. There's more of an all or nothing necessity to be with that person. Whereas I think when you're older, there's that impetus is still there, but it's also grounded by better reasoning, right? You think things through more. You kind of weigh in your head, is this what I want? Because you've either learned coming up what you don't want or what you did want in a relationship. Whereas a teen is figuring this stuff out for the first time, right? So it's going to be let's soar and fall. And when you're an adult, you're let's just jump gracefully. because we know the danger's on the bottom, you know what I mean? It's a little bit more care. So I am very conscious of those things.
What's your favorite scene in your upcoming 2 Regency books?
In the which?
In Worst Duke in London and Lady Night.
Oh my God, The Worst Duke in London has such great scenes, but I'll give one away. There's one where they go into this like underground gaming hell, and they're dressed as boys, and they decide to fence for money, and the male protagonist comes in as the opponent. So it's Zia and Rafi fighting, and it's just so full of tension. And of course, she beats him because she's amazing.
Girl power.
I know, exactly. And but it's just so tense, and they're talking during the fight, and it's just really, I love that scene. Lots of tension, which is, I think, also to YA and adult, angst and tension really builds that romantic stuff up.
Well, since we're talking about tension and big emotions, you've also done some bungee jumping and some skydiving.
Ooh.
How does the adrenaline of those kind of activities compare to the adrenaline of releasing a book?
I think releasing a book is worse. It's like literally, well, you're putting your blood, sweat, and tears out there for people to say whether they hate it or love it, right? So as an author, I think, there's a lot of discussion about when you publish the book, it doesn't belong to you anymore. So I kind of just move on to the next thing. So I think that's more fearful. Doing the bungee jumping and the skydiving, yes, it's scary, but once you jump, the feeling of flying is incredible. So the adrenaline takes over the fear. I think with releasing a book, the fear kind of continues a little bit because you never want it to you want it to be great. But even if you have like a gazillion great reviews, that one person, I think the more books you release, though, you get I don't want to say a thicker skin because I don't think I'll ever have a thick skin. But, you know who you're writing for, your audience, and the people who are going to always appreciate your books.
And you've lived and visited all over the world. What is something you've learned along on your travels that have really helped shape you as a person and as a writer?
I love that question. I think we have to realize that the world is really, really broad, and there are many different cultures and many, many different customs. And if you, put all those things together, it gives you a broader worldview of, how something might exist somewhere else, whether that's, language or, how people interact with each other, or even clothing, you know what I mean? I think living in Europe and living, here, living in the Caribbean has really helped me to kind of broaden my worldview. And I value that a lot.
You've also been in Fortune 500 companies and all that businessy world.
Yeah.
What have you learned from that has helped inform Regency romance, where money is so important to these romances?
Yeah, that's a good question. I worked on Wall Street, and, I was always I wanted to make my own money and live my own life. And I think the comparison with Regency, because women weren't allowed to work and all their money was owned by their husbands and they couldn't own property, I wanted to show how do women in that time who are constrained by the rules of society and the restrictions break out of those to get what they want. And that's what all of my historical romance novels are about. How does each character get what they want within the limitations of the society, particularly the women? Because the men had a lot of freedom, right?
They could do whatever they want.
I know, back then, yeah, forget it.
And there's a line in The Worst Duke in London in the beginning that feels very timely for everything going on now. It's still the argument of the women's places in the home, and they should be seen, not heard. And it feels like that argument was going on back then, but it's still going on now. Why is that a message that still needs to be talked about?
I feel like, it comes down to basically women being able to use every gift that's given to them, whether it's their brain or their ability to do things. I feel like it's kind of equality is what it comes down to, right? And the right to be able to do anything that a person who is a man can.
You've been in part of many, many sports over your life. Are there any chances that you might dabble into the very popular world of sports romances? And which sport would you think would be the best one to start with?
Sports romances.
Because you've done a lot of sports, like cricket.
Listen,
We need a cricket romance now.
I know. I actually did write a cricket versus baseball sort of romance Regency for the Bookish Box anthology. So it was called I cannot remember this, an unconventional match, I think it was. I can't remember, but match, right, for cricket and baseball. And then they had the drawing was really cute because they had a cricket bat and a baseball bat crossed. So it was really cute. I don't know. I did 4 varsity sports in high school. So I did cricket, swimming, netball, and soccer. Maybe a soccer romance because that's what I did through high school and college. But definitely not like hockey. I know that's super hot right now. I've read a few of those.
So
They're
popular. Yes. I mean, there's something about the bluntness of a hockey player that plays into
I think it's all those TikTok videos where they're doing their pre-exercises, like what's happening? Buddies.
They're just stretching.
Stretch it.
That's all it is. Just really important stretches for skating and for falling on the ice.
For not having injuries. I mean, it's, common sense.
No one wants hurt.
Nobody wants hurt.
You mentioned the romantasy. So romantasy is also very, very hot. What can you tell us about your romantasy book coming out in early 2025?
I am super excited about this romantasy one. It's my first. I actually didn't start out. I started out in young adult science fiction and fantasy. So fantasy has always been my first love. By historical romance, now back to adult. So it's about a woman who is in a world that doesn't have magic, and she finds out she has starlight magic. And there's this prophecy about old gods that want to use her magic to return to the world. And so she is part of this selection for the crown prince who's trying to find this star keeper with this, to bring like a bridal buffet, I call it. And she shows up. She wants nothing to do with it. All she wants to do is visit the castle forge. And then she meets the illegitimate son of the king, who is part of the rebellion to bring down the monarchy. And they go on adventures through the realm to try to figure out, her power. And then, of course, there's a devastating attraction between the two of them, but lots of secrets are being kept. And then there's a big showdown at the end. So I really love it because the idea of like one person having magic in a world that is, facing a dearth of it. So they only have it in crystals, and it's very zealously guarded by the monarchy. It was really interesting to write, and what was awesome about it, it's a mix of Indian, Middle Eastern, American, Caribbean, astrology, mythology, and chiromancy. So I think that's how you say it, chiromancy, palmistry. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
The last question we always ask, because this is Literary Hype, what books are you hyped about?
Oh my gosh. That's a tough question because I'm like literally reading everything, but I know that Bridgerton has a new book coming out. I want to read that. I don't know if there's a title on it yet, but she's such a good writer. Also with HarperCollins. And now you're like, I'm stumped. I'm like, who?
Every time I ask.
I want to read Raven Kennedy's last book in her series. I am dying. I think that's soon too. The 5th book.
They've been putting them out, like republishing them in a traditional sense. So
yeah.
I have lost track of which one we're on.
No, it's 5. I need it. Yeah, I need it very badly. And I'm trying to think what else I'm really excited for. I don't know.
Well, thank you so much for taking time at Steamy Lit Con to talk about your many, many books coming out.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again to Amalie for taking time out of her Steamy Lit Con schedule to talk to me about her books, including the sequels to Queen Bee and Always Be My Duchess, The Worst Duke in London. If you'd like to get any of these books, the links to do so are down in the description for you, as well as where to find Amalie on social media. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the Literary Hype channel if you have not done so already, and share this with a friend. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.